Imagine a city where all the rich people live on one side of town and all the poor people live on the other side of town. The rich neighbourhoods have big houses with yards and driveways, while the poor neighbourhoods have smaller houses with less space. The rich neighbourhoods also have better access to basic services like schools, hospitals and grocery stores. This is similar to the situation in Strand and Nomzamo. The white residents of Strand enjoy a more comfortable lifestyle than the black residents of Nomzamo due to the legacy of apartheid and the ongoing inequalities in South Africa. It is important to note that the racial divide in Strand and Nomzamo is not just a matter of geography. It is also a matter of social and economic inequality. Black residents are more likely to be poor and unemployed than white residents. They are also more likely to live in substandard housing and have less access to basic services. The racial divide in Strand and Nomzamo is a complex problem, but it is one that needs to be addressed. South Africa needs to find ways to bridge the gap between rich and poor, and to ensure that all citizens have access to the same opportunities. Imagine you're in a helicopter looking down at Cape Town. You can see the different neighbourhoods spread out below you. Some neighbourhoods are mostly white, while others are mostly black or coloured. This division is not an accident. It is the result of decades of apartheid, a system of racial segregation that was in place in South Africa until 1994. Apartheid laws forced people to live in separate areas based on their race. This made it difficult for black and coloured people to access good jobs, schools and healthcare. Even though apartheid is over, its legacy continues to shape the city of Cape Town. To understand the roots of this segregation, we must delve into history. In the 1600s, the Dutch established their presence in the southern tip of Africa, aiming to supply passing ships with essential provisions for their trade routes to Asia. British colonial rule took over 150 years later, renaming the territory Cape Colony. Meanwhile, many Dutch colonists moved inland to evade British oversight, continuing to exploit enslaved individuals. Both the Dutch and British used Cape Colony strategically for trade, and its economic significance soared in the 1870s when diamond mining commenced. To facilitate diamond exports, railways were constructed, connecting the mines to the coastal port of Cape Town. This newfound access catapulted Cape Colony into being one of Britain's most prized and exploited colonies. The economic transformation, however, created a divisive imbalance. The green areas on historical maps represent the predominantly black regions of Cape Colony, largely excluded from the railway-driven economic growth. To perpetuate this racial inequality, the colonial government began institutionalizing segregation through laws. The Natives Land Act of 1913 played a pivotal role, confining black populations to only 8% of South Africa's land, rendering land ownership impossible elsewhere and compelling relocations to the outskirts of major cities for employment under white employers. As Cape Town's trade and economy surged, a unique neighbourhood named District 6 began to flourish. This area became home to a diverse community of former enslaved individuals, merchants, artists, and immigrants. District 6 embodied a cosmopolitan spirit where unity and solidarity prevailed. It was a thriving, integrated community where the mantra was, "Your child is my child." The legal transition of 1934 marked the end of British control, with the descendants of Dutch colonists seizing power in what became the Union of South Africa. Between 1949 and 1971, apartheid, a system that institutionalized racial segregation, saw the passage of 148 laws further entrenching division. The Population Registration Act of 1950 officially categorized individuals by race: white, native, or black, and eventually Asian. Restrictive laws dictated where people could live. Black South Africans were forcibly moved to rural areas known as homelands or Bantustans, areas with underdeveloped economies. These areas often overlapped with regions previously excluded from the railway economy. Passbooks specified where black individuals were allowed to work or travel. In cities like Cape Town, the Group Areas Act relocated non-white populations to separate urban areas. Prime land close to higher valued properties was allocated to white individuals. In 1966, District 6 was declared a whites-only area. Bulldozers razed the neighbourhood, and more than 60,000 people were forcibly displaced from their homes. This brutal and widespread violence was a common occurrence in apartheid-era South Africa. After decades of internal and international pressure, apartheid finally crumbled. The new government lifted residence restrictions. Millions who had been excluded from economic development for generations flocked to major cities in search of basic services and economic prospects. They settled in vacant lands on the periphery of cities, creating townships. The government constructed millions of homes and expanded access to clean water and electricity. However, this effort unintentionally reproduced apartheid's legacy, as the only available land for public housing was on the city's periphery. Today, 60% of Cape Town's predominantly black population resides in these townships on the city's outskirts. Cape Town city centre has land available for development, but its prime location makes it a valuable asset, often sold to private developers who erect luxury apartments. In contrast, District 6, right in the heart of Cape Town, remains mostly untouched. The former residents of District 6 have waged an ongoing battle against private development, with some successfully returning to homes built by the city. Yet, there are still hundreds of claimants waiting to reclaim their place in District 6. While apartheid and colonialism may be in the past, their repercussions continue to shape the present and future of Cape Town and South Africa as a whole. The deep-seated scars left on individuals and communities have yet to be fully addressed, and the task of reconciling and coexisting in the face of such a complex and painful history remains an ongoing challenge. The legacy of apartheid endures in many ways. In Cape Town, for example, the city's spatial layout still reflects the apartheid government's policy of racial segregation. Black and coloured people were forced to live in townships on the outskirts of the city, while white people were concentrated in the more desirable coastal neighbourhoods. This separation has had a lasting impact on access to jobs, education, healthcare, and other essential services. Black and coloured South Africans continue to be disproportionately represented among the poor and unemployed. Apartheid also had a devastating impact on South African education. Black schools were underfunded and overcrowded, and the curriculum was designed to indoctrinate students in white supremacy. As a result, many black South Africans did not receive a quality education, which has limited their opportunities for economic and social advancement. Despite the challenges, there is also hope for the future. Cape Town and South Africa as a whole have made significant progress since the end of apartheid. The post-apartheid government has implemented a number of policies to address the legacy of apartheid, such as land reform and affirmative action. However, more needs to be done to ensure that all South Africans have equal opportunities to succeed.